We've all felt it before. A sudden gut feeling that something's off, maybe a quiet whisper in your mind telling you that you need to take the long way home, not to trust that person who's just smiling at you, or you pass on that opportunity that looks perfect on paper. Is this wisdom or is this intuition? Is this wired into our biology or is it just echoes of past experiences? Should we trust it or can we trust it? Well, that's the topic of today's podcast. And this is the Social Engineer Podcast, the Doctor is In series, episode 319. I'm Chris Hadnagy, CEO and founder of Social Engineer LLC and the Innocent Lives Foundation and the Institute for Social Engineering. And I've been hosting this podcast since 2009. And as always, we need a doctor to have the Doctor is In series. So we have our co-host, Dr. Abbie Maroño. Nice to have you here, Doc.
Great to be here, Chris. I'm Dr. Abbie Maroño. I'm the Director of Education at Social Engineer and a behavioral scientist. I'm an expert in behavioral analysis and human decision making.
Excellent. And if you want to see more of Dr. and Abbie together, November 14 and 15 at Rosen College here in Orlando, we are going to be hosting the Human Behavior Conference. Conference? I don't even know what a conference is, but we'll host that too. HubeCon. When you come on down, we're going to have a whole 2 days of amazing topics. It's going to be based on influence and InfoSec this year. And if you go to humanbehaviorcon.com, you can see the amazing list of speakers and trainers that we're going to have coming out there. We heard your comments from last year, so we expanded it to 2 days, and it's Friday, Saturday. So go get your tickets before they sell out, before the early bird ends, which will be coming up, I think, this month when this podcast is out. It's ending at the end of this month. So go humanbehaviorcon.com, and we'll hopefully see you there. If you're interested in social engineering, then we have a nice Slack channel. I think we have 1,900 people in there every day talking about different things. We even have a job board where employers or employees can come in and post that they're looking for work or looking to hire. So if you're interested in that, in a family-friendly and legal way to talk about social engineering, you can find it in the show notes. And if you can't, just ping me or Abbie on LinkedIn and we'll get it to you. And we want to invite everyone here to go check out innocentlivesfoundation.org. The nonprofit there has been around for 8 years, and we help law enforcement geolocate people who traffic children and create child abuse material. And some exciting announcements. I think, is it your second book? Is it out now for ILF?
It is. Oh,
September.
It's either out very, very soon or it's in approval.
Okay. So what's the title of this, the new child's book?
Lilly the Brave.
So it's going to be really cool. Hopefully we can have a cover at least that we can put in the show notes or a link to it on Amazon so you can see it. If you're a parent or a caregiver, Abbie's first book is really, really great, trying to help kids learn how to communicate about such threats as child predators. But it's a really helpful book and done just for ages. We're going between like 3 and 5, 5 and 6?
3 to 6 years old.
Yeah, so really, really great. Just go check them out. And you can find out more information at innocentlivesfoundation.org. You can also support us through donations or volunteering. So go check that out there. If you like the music on the show, it's none other than Clutch. So go to clutchmerch.com and give them some love because they're always supporting us and have been supporting us for 8 years. And if you like this episode, thumbs up and like it because that helps spread the message, and keep giving us your ideas for topics. Because the more times you do that, the more times we're able to cover things that you definitely want to hear. So as we mentioned, Abbie, we are talking about intuition.
Yes.
So why did this topic come up? And let's even start basic. What is intuition?
Well, we hear a lot about trusting your intuition, but we don't always know how to define it. So intuition is pretty simple. It's the ability to understand or know something immediately without the need for conscious recognition. And that conscious bit is really important. It's sometimes called a gut feeling or an instinct. So it's kind of that feeling you get when something just feels off, even if you can't articulate why, or when you meet someone for the first time and you feel you can trust them on a more positive side, or you can't on a more negative side. That's the broad definition, but I'm a scientist. So the scientific perspective is that it is a non-conscious form of reasoning. Basically, your brain rapidly processing cues from your environment, comparing them to past experiences, and then delivering you with a conscious awareness of how you got there, or without a conscious awareness even. So that's the scientific sense, but in a really simple sense, it's just that feeling you get that you don't know why.
And there's a lot of this based on nonverbal?
Yes. It's your brain recognizing cues in the environment and sending you signals about them. And you don't always know what it's picking up on, but it's picking up on something. Because imagine if it made everything conscious. As you walk into a room, you pick up on everything. And this is called neuroception, where your nervous system is constantly scanning the environment. So what color he's wearing, how close he sat, the sound of their voice, every smell, every sight, every sound, everything.
It'd be overwhelming.
Imagine that being conscious.
Nope.
So your nervous system's picking up on these things. And if it senses something potentially dangerous or something that senses safety, it will send you a signal. And what we really feel is a nervous system response. So we feel either like that fight or flight or calmness, or the nervous system relaxes. And that's that feeling of, oh, something isn't right here. My body is telling me something, but I'm not quite sure what.
I know when I've taught on nonverbals, especially during the foundational class, we always, it's usually women in the class say that they had that experience where they went into a party or a gathering. They didn't even interact with this person, but there was something about this guy that just was like, nope, not going to go anywhere near that.
Yeah.
So is intuition always right?
That's a great question. And it's an important one because we always get told, trust your gut. The short answer is no. Intuition is not always right, but it's not random or useless, because intuition is your brain's attempt to make fast decisions using pattern recognition, past experiences, and emotional memory. That's really key. It's emotional memory. But it's only as good as the information that it's built on. So if your experiences are limited, biased, or emotionally charged, say traumatic, your intuition can mislead you. And this is especially true for fear, anxiety, and trauma, because your brain is on high alert. So it might flag something as dangerous, not because it is, but because it resembles something that caused you harm.
Yeah. So when I think about this, many, many years ago, my wife had a friend that had an abusive partner. And sadly, he resembled me. So whenever she was over or with my wife, and if I would come in the room or come home from somewhere, she would have a very visceral fear reaction. Like it was shaking, and I couldn't stand near her. And I never hurt her or touched her or anything. Right. So, but I resembled him so much that she couldn't even have me in the room because it brought back that fear memory. So I agree, but I still think we should trust it. Right. I mean, it's better safe than sorry, isn't it?
Yeah. And I mean, so not always, because sometimes it can move you away from something that could be really positive. So for example, because it's these unconscious memories and emotions, but really what it's doing, it's your brain and your body trying to protect you. So I had to learn to kind of develop a better understanding of what's intuition and a trauma response, because I went through a very difficult romantic relationship many, many years ago that was very abusive. So after coming out of that relationship, as I would start to get close to a new person, once the closeness would build, I would feel this overwhelming disgust. And then I would leave, because you don't stay somewhere that someone disgusts you. And it was visceral. It was like, ugh, like the thought of them coming anywhere near me, touching me was disgusting. I wanted it away from me. And it kept happening. And what I realized was it was my brain and body recognizing that every time I feel safe with a person and feel close and my body relaxes and there's trust there, it's that person that's going to cause me extreme pain. So the way to keep me safe is, as that closeness builds and as someone gets more intimate, we have to remove them from my life to protect me. So I really had to recognize that about myself. And once I was aware of it, and I would say, okay, don't react on the emotion. Let me objectively stand away and let me keep pushing forward, but at a rate that I'm comfortable, and see if this feeling kind of goes away. And what I learned was, when I observed the feeling, let myself feel it, because it's really hard to control your emotions. It's much easier to control the response to the emotions. And that's what we don't realize. We think that we can control emotions and what triggers them. We can't. We cannot control our emotional triggers. We just can't. We can control what we do about them. And then we can start to learn to not be so triggered, because we're not always reacting. Emotions come in waves. So that's what I learned. And then as you do that, and as you grow through those emotional triggers, they become less so. And now I don't have that same feeling to the same intensity. I do still have it to a degree, but I'm aware of it, so I don't let it control me.
Yeah, I think that's an important delineation, because
Yes.
I think about this, my generation, my parents and the parents of that generation raised us with, like, if you were in school and a boy was hitting a girl or pulling her hair, that meant he liked you. Yeah. Well, that's kind of a horrible message, right? Raising your daughters to think that when a boy likes you, he's going to abuse you. So now you socialize this to a point where you're kind of teaching your kids that, well, this is normal. So then they grow up and kind of, now how are they supposed to expect anything more? So like, as when I grew up and I realized that, I'm like, oh, we're never doing that with my daughter. Like, no, somebody hits you, you hit him back, or you run, or you go tell somebody. Like, that doesn't mean he likes you. If that's the way he's showing he likes you, then he's not the right person, right?
Yep. And much of what we know about the world and how we interact with it is socialized. And that's one of the reasons that we ignore our intuition, because often we're socialized to override it. So from a very young age, many people are taught to prioritize politeness, compliance, and logic over gut instincts. I am British, so being polite is part of our culture. Always say please and thank you, and try not to be a burden, and don't be too loud, and always do what is socially appropriate is very much part of our culture. So coming here to America, I found that was something, being very polite, saying sorry a lot. And the way that I interacted was very different, because that's how I'm socialized, and it's a very different cultural thing. Now, each culture has their own socializations. But for example, a child might feel uncomfortable around an adult, but is told to be polite. Or a professional may have a bad feeling about a business deal, but is encouraged to be a team player. And over time, these conditions, they lead us to second guess our inner cues, especially for young kids, and especially in environments where conformity and authority are emphasized. And some cultures are very, very strong on authority, especially Eastern cultures. And then we learn to suppress these signals from the body and favor instead, okay, well, what is socially appropriate? That's often one of the reasons why we do ignore our intuition.
Yeah, I remember being a kid, and, in my family, it was like you didn't have the option if you were going to hug a relative. But I remember there was this one uncle I had, and I didn't like him. I didn't like him at all. Never trusted him. Just something about him. And it wasn't until I was an older teenager that I found out that he had sexually assaulted multiple family members. But every time he came over, I was made to sit on his lap. I was made to hug him. Like, it was like, well, you can't be rude. You have to do what you're at, right? And it was like, I didn't realize for years that gut feeling was because there was just something about him that made me feel icky. But being forced to be affectionate with this guy that everybody knew was this horrible person also made me grow up thinking, like, you start doubting, like, can I even trust my intuition? Because until I found out, then when I found out what he was, and I'm like, oh, I was right the whole time.
Yep. And it's a really heated discussion too for parents of, say when family members come over, do you tell your kid to hug the grandparents? And I've heard this discussion a lot. And I remember when I was a PhD student, one of my really good friends there, Fliss, she had a young daughter, and her young daughter was a very free spirit. And the way Fliss brought her up was, she's in charge of her choices. Thrift was there to keep her safe and guide her in good directions, but she had autonomy. And I remember she was saying that she had family come over and she got in an argument with her parents because her daughter wouldn't hug them. And they tried to hug her. She said, I don't want to. And they said, Fliss. And she went, no, she doesn't want to. It's her choice. If she doesn't want to, she doesn't have to. And at the time, I remember I stood back a little shocked, like, well, why don't you just make her hug the grandparents? And I'm like, actually, No, what a horrible thing to make someone have physical contact, regardless of how innocent it is. We should be teaching from a young age they have autonomy. But that socialization factor is it's rude if you don't. Well, who cares?
Yeah. We raised Amaya exactly that way because my reasoning was, well, if someone comes in the house and I don't want to hug them, no one forces me to do it. So what's the difference, right? Like, just because I'm an adult, I have the freedom to say no, but my child doesn't, you know? Yeah. And we would always ask Amaya later on. So, hey, what was it about that person that, you know, you didn't want to? And she would oftentimes, I remember one time in a grocery store, because amaya was, as you know, she's like very out there, always up front, making noise and stuff. And this woman came up and said, "Oh, you're so cute." And she went behind me and wouldn't even say thank you or anything. So when the woman left, I said, what was that about? She said she had an angry face. And I was like, okay. So she didn't like her because whatever was on her face, she looked angry. So I was like, good. I'm not going to say, get out here and be polite to this woman. I just said, "Oh, thank you. She's just feeling shy today." Right. And that was it. But I just let her make that decision because I don't know what she's seeing or not seeing, why she's uncomfortable. And I remember being a kid and being forced to do those things and thinking that kind of stunk, you know, when you really didn't want to. But, that's an interesting one because, I think, like you said, when in my generation being raised, children were seen, not heard, right? So you have you fear the consequences of stepping out of that boundary. Like it would be punishment or getting yelled at or, you know, being told you're a bad kid or something like that.
Yeah. And that's another reason why we ignore our intuition, because of the consequences. So sometimes we do hear our intuition and we ignore it because it points us to a hard truth. Maybe that relationship isn't right for you. And I am guilty of this. I am someone that leads with my heart, and anyone that knows me knows that I pour my heart into everything that I do.
No.
I'm all in or I'm none in. And that's why most things don't bother me, because my heart is completely in something else. So I have been alone for a long time, but when I do meet someone, I pour my heart into it. And when my intuition goes, "Hey, this isn't right," it's a hard thing for me to accept. And sometimes I ignore it. And that's been one of my journeys. But for some people, maybe it's a job that drains your spirit. Maybe it's a friend that isn't really in your corner, but you've gone through a lot together. There are so many things that you really want to be right and you want to be wrong about, but you aren't, and your intuition says something else, and we ignore it because we know that once we accept it, we have to do something about it, because following your intuition requires action, change, or often confrontation. And these things we instinctively avoid so we can rationalize, explain away, or distract ourselves from facing the consequences. But that is what we need to do, because intuition is there for a reason.
Yeah, that's a hard one. I think, like when, like you said, when you know somebody's bad for you, a friend or something, but you've done so much together, or you've experienced so many things together. So you're like, well, no, I'm wrong. I've done this myself, actually argued myself, when the writing is so clear, like I need to run the other way from this person. Like they are not good for me, and they're not doing anything good for me. But it's like, no, we have this history, we have this thing, we have this, friendship. And it's like, I've done this so many times. I look at every time I'm done and I actually see it, I'm like, you're so stupid. But
I am. What I teach is step back and imagine it was someone else, because I was in this. It is hard to do, but I was in this situation recently where there was a very clear truth in front of me, but the person was a very good liar, and I really wanted to believe them. And I had a moment, and there was a nonverbal cue. And nonverbal cues are ambiguous in that it's very difficult to use that as fact and evidence. But in my body, I felt it. And I convinced myself that I was incorrect. But then my friend said, "You train the Secret Service. What would you tell them?" And I'm like, oh, let me step back. And I'm like, I know what I would tell them, because I'm right about this. And that's a really hard thing to accept because I'm like, it wasn't just the one cue. There were multiple others, but they could be explained away. But when I'm training, I train with that understanding. And I put that understanding to the side because it was my personal life, not my professional. And sometimes we have to really trust that intuition and go, I don't want this to be correct, but it is. And then another reason, which is related, why we often ignore intuition. And this is really at the heart of why we ignore intuition. And it's that lack of self-trust. Because it's like I said, often it's ambiguous. We don't have that 100% this is correct. We have, I feel like it is. And if you don't fully trust yourself, it's really easy to listen to those excuses. When we've been gaslit, manipulated, or repeatedly told that our perspectives are wrong, we begin to doubt those inner signals. Say it happened as you were a kid or you've been in negative relationships. Over time, this leads to this kind of chronic self-questioning. And even when that intuition is strong and it's saying, no, you might think, well, what if I'm being dramatic? And this is where that self-concept comes in. And we've talked about this in previous episodes. And self-concept is the way we view and understand ourselves. So if I say to you, who are you? You reach into your self-concept to tell me. When our self-concept is really unclear or unstable and we don't really know who we are, it can become much harder to trust our own instincts. And this is also related to self-esteem. So when you have low self-esteem, you find it more difficult to make confident decisions or rely on gut feelings because you're lacking that inner trust with yourself. And if you're unsure who you are, what you believe in, or if your internal compass feels unreliable, it's really hard to know if it's pointing in the right direction. And that's why when it comes to our intuition, one of the most important things is our relationship with ourselves. We need to try and learn to trust ourselves and understand ourselves. And it always comes back to this, Chris, emotional regulation and self-awareness. Every time we go into psych, it always comes back to this, and leadership and everything, because it's so foundational. And it's so foundational to intuition, that self-trust.
Yeah, I had a friendship that I thought was really, really serious. And, things that were said like, oh, we're going to be friends forever kind of thing. And then it just stopped abruptly. And I'm convincing myself that I must have done something wrong, or there's another reason for it, making excuses. And then my therapist, which I lovingly called Dr. Molotov, because she does these things like at the very end of our sessions, she like throws out a bomb, like a Molotov cocktail, and then goes, okay, we're done for this week, talk to you later. And it's like, what? You just can't end on that. It's like, I got gray matter oozing out of my ear. Like, what's happening here? Like, but she said to me one time, she goes, forget about what was said. What is this person showing you? Yeah. And I'm like, ooh. And like, if you were valuable, then they would show you that. But if you're not valuable, they're going to show you that. Yeah. And that was an important lesson for me, because instead of thinking about all the things that were said that made it seem like it was close and serious, instead look at how easily you were just tossed aside. Yeah. And then, that tells you something about the value for you to that person. So intuition, I always told my kids, like, trust it. But I like this method of saying trust it, but also verify. Like we talk about this in security all the time. Trust, but verify, right? So if you're feeling this way, just ask yourself questions. I mean, I think if you're walking home and your intuition says, hey, don't go that route, don't maybe question that, go a different route. But when it comes to relationships and things like that, I think it's good to question yourself.
And you want to trust your intuition, absolutely, and verify. But we also don't want to always be responding and be extra safe to the point that we cut off potentially really good things, like I did for a long time. Because like I said, that disgust mechanism was trying to keep me safe. It was trying to do a good thing. But what it was actually doing was stopping me from developing close relationships. So not all gut feelings are intuitive wisdom. Some are just nervous system responses because of stress, hypervigilance, and trauma. So one thing that is really important is definitely trust your intuition, but we need to know when something isn't trauma response and when it's intuition. Yeah. Because if you have a history of betrayal or danger, you might feel uneasy in safe situations because the context shares a sensory similarity, tone of voice, or facial expression. And sometimes that intuition will say, get out, get out, get out, if the situation is safe. Like when I said, when I started to develop a close relationship, that's a positive thing. But because something negative happened with a person who was close to me, my body said, this isn't positive. And that can really happen. So without this self-awareness and regulation, the discomfort can masquerade as intuition. So you might avoid a kind person because mannerisms remind you of someone that hurt you. And you don't want to go through life living that way.
Yeah.
And although your nervous system is protecting you, it's not always an accurate signal. So I love the idea of verify. But intuition is calm and clear, and anxiety is urgent and loud. So if you have this feeling of I need to act right now, that's probably trauma. If it's something doesn't feel right and it's a little bit more subtle, that's more likely to be intuition.
Well, as always, another fascinating topic. If we look here, you have, for everyone listening, there's quite a few references that we'll put in the show notes for anyone who's interested in reading further on the science behind what we talked about today. And, we'll just say, hey, hopefully you enjoyed this episode. I know I did. It's always like a therapy session with Dr. Abbie. So now I need to go cry in a corner and drink more coffee. But if you enjoyed it, then tune in next month to find out what our episode is about then. And until then, stay safe and don't always trust your gut. See you.